Well, we've been going through the Gospel of John verse by verse for about a year now, and I don't know about you, but I've really thoroughly enjoyed it. Just a heads up, we're going to be finishing in July, so July will mark the end of our walk through the Gospel of John. Then we'll have a short topical sermon series before we jump into another book, and I'll tell you about that soon. But today we're going to be in John chapter 19. One of the reasons why I really like John's Gospel, I like all of the Gospels, but John's Gospel lets us see the heavenly perspective of who Jesus is and what he does. So the synoptic Gospels are Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and they're called the synoptic Gospels because they follow the general pattern, same pattern of the chronological life of Jesus Christ. And here's what Jesus did, here's what people saw. But John is different. John lets us see the eternal being of God in the flesh, Jesus, the Word become flesh and dwells among us. And we get to see this glory of Christ in a way that's not on display in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And it's not that the Gospels differ with each other. They don't. They are compatible and they agree with one another, but it's just a different perspective. And so I hope you've been enjoying the perspective from John. And today we come to another unique perspective that he's going to give us a glimpse into the hour that Jesus is part of in this time. And just before we start, I've been praying all week for you today and for this moment that you would hear this message and you would receive it by faith and that God would impact your life through it. You say, well, how do you know I was going to be here? Well, I pray every week that God would give me a message for the people that he knows are going to be here right here now at 10:30. I pray for the 9 o'clock service too, so don't tell them just the 10:30, but I pray for you that you would receive it because we just take things for granted a lot of times in life. We just assume things just work and they're just going to work all the time, and unless we take the time to ask questions, sometimes hard questions, tough questions, we will never understand truly lots of things in life. I mean, before this past week, I thought I just throw my clothes in the dirty clothes hamper. They magically appear folded in my drawer every day. I don't know how it happens. I don't know what. Well, it goes into a washing machine, okay? And the washing machine, I've done some loads of laundry before, and I've done plenty of them. I just push the buttons, and it works. Well, this past week, the washer stopped working. So I had to figure out what happened with the washing machine, and so I had to do the research on it. And the reason why the washing machine was not working is because the lid lock switch was not engaging. And the lid lock switch, for those of you who are very interested, locks the lid down in place, and it tells the machine that the lid's shut so it can continue to work. It can do its thing. It can fill the tub with water. It can agitate the clothes. It can drain the water, and it can spin the clothes. And that each part of the cycle, this lock lid switch has to tell the machine that the lid is shut. It's a safety device. And so I figured out that the lid switch was broken, okay? And so I discovered that if you cut the lid switch off and you take the wires that are in the lid switch, you can connect the two opposite wires and it makes a complete circuit, and it tells the machine that the lid is shut, that the lid is locked, even though it's not. I'm bypassing the actual switch part of it, and you put them two together. Now, that's pretty cool. But during the cycle of the machine, it repeatedly sends a message to that lid lock switch during the cycle on each part of the cycle to unlock it and to lock it just to make sure it's really shut. And so you can't just tape them together and have it work because it won't work that way. You need to get a different switch. And so I ordered a switch on Amazon. It came the next day. It was beautiful. And I took apart the washer and I hooked up this new switch. And right when I got to see if it was really going to work, almost to the last step, I realized that it was the wrong part. And so I had to take that part, and it's still sitting on my kitchen table. I got to send that back, but I had to order another switch, which I'm going to get this week, and I really look forward to getting to know the washer even a little bit more better. And so I had no idea this world of washing machines existed, and it's a fascinating one that I pray that you never have to go down. But there's things in life we just take for granted, and we just hear things, and unless we do the research, unless we actually study it, we're not going to know it. And Hey, you know one's a big one today? It's abortion, the abortion issue. You know, anybody hear anything about the abortion issue this last week on social media or anything? Probably not, right? Everybody's posting about it. Everybody's Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. And so I want to study some statistics, okay? I want to learn about it. Because if I just listen to the culture, if I just listen to the news, I just hear that it's a big deal because this is women's reproductive rights. That's what it's all about. And who doesn't want to have reproductive rights? That sounds good. In 2020, there were 930,000 abortions. In 2000, there was 1.3 million abortions. So since 1973, there's been 60 million abortions. Now, so what? Numbers don't mean anything to us. There's 330 million people in the United States. What does that even mean? We can't grasp numbers sometimes. So here, see if you can grasp this. In 2019, 19% of all U.S. pregnancies ended in abortion. 20% of every pregnancy ended in abortion. Now, why? Because once you listen to voices in our world too, you hear things like incest and like rape and like, man, can you imagine trying to carry a baby to full term with that? And so in Florida, they keep reasons for every abortion. Every abortion has to have a reason that is documented. And there were 75,000 of them in 2019. Here's what the breakdown was. 75%, it was elective surgery. It was no reason whatsoever. It was either not ready for a child or they were done having children. 20% was because of social and economic reasons. You don't have enough money for the baby. Maybe it's a young unwed mother and there's social pressures for it. And so that's 95% of all the abortions were because of convenience. Let's just be honest. 1% was because of a serious abnormality with the baby. 0.2 of 1% was because the woman's life was endangered, possibly. 0.15 of 1% was because of rape. 0.01% was because of incest. Let me say it again. The vast majority, over 95% of every unborn baby put to death was because of convenience. So we as Christians who love life, right? Amen? Do we love life? So we should be happy that this is the case. I mean, it's not going to change anything in the state of Illinois. We live in a crummy state, right? So it's not going to change anything, but at least it'll maybe deter some people or get some people to think about actually doing the research that it's just not about just reproductive rights. It's about the life of a little baby growing inside of a mother. I mean, just think about it. If you just think about it logically, I mean, at some point, life has to matter, doesn't it? At some point? We can't go to all the 5-year-olds and start putting them to death. How about 1-year-olds? Does that work? How about 1-week-year-old? Does that work? How about 9 months? Does it just matter which side of the birth canal they're on? I mean, at some point, there's got to be a respect, a love of life. And Christians, we must be the ones who love life the most because we see it as so precious because Christ gave his life for us. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the gospel. We're talking about salvation. This is a much bigger issue than even the abortion issue. Okay? This is the issue above all issues that the Scripture is concerned with. It's the reason, it's the hour that Jesus came. It's the purpose that he came. It was for your life and my life and everyone's possible eternal life. Jesus came to give us good news. And most people go through life without thinking about it. Most people go through life without thinking about the spiritual nature of things. Most people don't think about that there's a God. Most people don't think that they have any sin. Most people don't think they ever have to answer for their life or give an account of their life before some God. And most people just go through life working hard and having friends and enjoying life, and they don't ever think about the spiritual reality that there is a God who made you and all there is, and one day you will have to stand before him. And you know, we tend to just compare ourselves to other people. And we always look to the people that are worse than us, right? We never look at the people that are better than us. We look at the people that are worse than us, and we tend to think, well, I'm not that bad. I mean, of course I'm a sinner. Everybody's a sinner. You're a sinner. I'm a sinner. Get it. But I'm not that bad. So my life is okay. And most people go through their whole life operating in that way. And there's a truth that happened 2,000 years ago that affects us today. It's that Christ went through this hour that he came for. The purpose, he went through it for you. And I'm asking you today, even for the next 20 minutes, to consider what Christ did for you. It is the hour for which he came. The Gospel of John's always talking about this hour. Earlier on, Jesus said, no, my hour has not yet come. The hour has not yet come. Here the hour has come. The hour is his suffering. The hour is the cross. The hour is the passion of the Christ. And it's here. It's here, and it is brutal. John chapter 19, verse 1, it says that Pilate took Jesus and flogged him. And the soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head and arrayed him in a purple robe. They came up to him saying, "Hail, King of Jews," and struck him with their hands. Then Pilate went out again and said to them, "See, I am bringing out to you, that you may not find any guilt in him." So Jesus comes out wearing a crown of thorns and a purple robe, and Pilate says to them, "Behold the man." Now, there's an apparent discrepancy between the Gospel of Mark and John. And once we dig into it a little bit, we see that it's not a discrepancy at all. It's just a different perspective, as the Gospels are. Here, John tells us that Pilate takes Jesus and flogs him, and then he presents him to the people. And then at the end of our text, in verse 16, he once again presents Jesus to the people and says, "Behold your king," and they say, "Crucify him," and then he's taken out to be crucified. Now, in Mark chapter 15, we have Jesus presented before the people, and then in verse 15, he is sentenced to death. The people say, "Crucify him." He is sentenced to death. Then he's flogged, and then he's taken to be crucified. So the flogging is in two seemingly different places in this hour of Christ. Now, before we talk about the reason how we rectify this, we got to talk about the floggings. See, the Romans were great torturers. They were very good at inflicting brutality and pain upon its people, its enemies, the people that it occupied. They were very good at what they did. And in a Roman province, like here in Judea, in Jerusalem, the ones that meted out the punishment were the soldiers, the Roman soldiers, and they were good at what they did. Now, they had three different types of flogging, and they had Latin terms for them. If you know Latin, I apologize because I'm going to mess up these words. But the first one is this, three different kinds of flogging. It's called fustigatio. This is a less severe beating that was given as punishment, and it was also administered with a severe warning that they better not do it again. Then the second type of flogging was called flagellatio. This was a brutal flogging for serious crimes. And it was harsh. It was terrible. I mean, none of these are fun. The first one's the least brutal. Second one's brutal. And then the last one, it's called verberatio. This was the very worst kind. Sometimes it killed a person. Many times it would leave bones exposed or entrails falling out. It was terrible. So what is John talking about in chapter 19, verse 1, flogging, and what is Mark talking about in Mark chapter 15, verse 15? Two different places. One happens before Jesus is presented to the people. The other one happens after he's been presented to the people before he's crucified. Here's what I think's going on, and I didn't come up with this. Scholars who are a lot smarter than me came up with it. See if you think this is good. John appears to tell us about the first time Jesus is flogged, which would be with the fustigatio flogging of the Romans. This would have been Jesus getting beat up. This would have involved Jesus having the crown of thorns and the purple robe. This would be him being flogged, but it wouldn't be to kill him. Why did Pilate do this? He did this to appease the Jews who were calling for Jesus' head. Crucify him. And so Pilate kind of agrees, I'll take him and I'll beat him up and I'll rough him up and then I'll present him to you guys. And what happens, we know, we read the story, we saw it, they refuse. They say, crucify him, release Barabbas, crucify him. So then after he's pronounced dead man walking, crucify him, then Mark 15 verse 15 happens where Jesus receives the verberatio flogging, the one that's the worst, that's the terrible that the Roman soldiers did. And they took the whips that were having metal chunks and glass pieces on the ends of them and bones, and that's what tore a person's body to shreds. And so that's what happened to Jesus. This would explain why Jesus couldn't carry his own cross. This would also explain the severe punishment that happened before the Passover, before the Sabbath day that was yet to come. Later on, that we're going to see it, that the other ones that are still alive, Jesus dies on the cross, but the other two are still alive when it's time to be ready for the Sabbath day, so their knees were broken so that it would hasten their death on the cross. Jesus dies, no doubt because of the verberatio and the fustigatio that he received at the hands of Pilate, at the bequest of the Jewish people and the religious authorities of the day. So, was this necessary? Why did this happen? I want to tell you the answer, and the answer, many people will never accept it. They'll never believe it. If they come to hear about Jesus, they'll think maybe he is a real person, maybe he wasn't, but he probably wasn't really how he is in the Gospels, and it's just kind of a made-up thing. And the reason why Jesus suffered so tremendously was because it was God's will that he would suffer. Isaiah chapter 53, we see the prophet predicting that this would happen. He says, "For he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. As one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not." Jesus was despised. We didn't esteem him. The people didn't love him. He healed the people, made the lame to walk and the blind to see. He fed the thousands of people. He cared for people. He loved people. He taught people to love one another and to even pray for your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Jesus did nothing wrong. And we didn't esteem him. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All of us like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. The reason why Jesus took the lashes, took the 2 floggings, was because he was paying for your sin and my sin and the sin of the world. He was making justice happen in his own body. That sin and rebellion that cannot go unpunished. We all crave justice on some levels. We know that justice needs to be served, and justice needs to be served for the sin of the world, and Jesus bore it on himself. And no one can say Jesus got out of it easy. No one can say that Jesus died too quick or too soon. He took the worst, because by his wounds all of our sins are healed. Verse 10 of Isaiah 53 says, "Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him." It was God's will. Now Jesus did the Father's will. He and the Father are one. And in his conversation with Pilate, he confirms that this is true. Pilate says to him, "Will you not speak to me? Do you not know that I have authority to release you and the authority to crucify you?" Verse 11, Jesus answered him, "You would have no authority over me at all unless it had been given to you from above." It was God's will. The plan, it was in place. It wasn't the crowd. It wasn't Pilate. It was the plan. So he was flogged, and then he was condemned. The condemnation came because the crowd is pressuring Pilate. How do they pressure him? They say to him, "If you release this man, you are not Caesar's friend." Verse 12. "Everyone who makes himself a king opposes Caesar." So they start threatening him. Now get the irony of this. These religious authorities, these Jewish people who detested the Romans, these unclean, filthy Gentile Romans were oppressors who occupied their land. They had to resort to saying to Pilate, essentially, "We are better Romans than you. And if you do not do this, we're going to tell on you because you're not a friend of Caesar's like we are." And they're putting pressure on him. And so the first time he comes out after he had roughed up Jesus, he says, "Behold the man." In Latin, it's ecce homo, how he would say it. Behold the man. And so Pilate is ridiculing Jesus, but he's really ridiculing the crowd. Because he's saying, "Behold the man." He's like, this is the dangerous man you've been talking about? This is the insurrectionist? This is the one you bring to me to be killed? And Jesus is there beaten up and bloodied and a crown of thorns on his head, and he's being mocked and he's been spit upon and he's been the beginning of the torture. And he said, "This is the man, this is your man, behold the man." And then at the end, when they threaten him, when they pressure him, when they continue, he presents Jesus in verse 14 and he says, "Behold your king," he says. Of course, he's mocking Jesus. Pilate is mocking Jesus, but he really is mocking the crowd. Behold your king. Now, in some ways, the irony of the Gospel of John here is that Pilate is speaking the truth. He doesn't know it, but he is. John showed us the same thing with the high priest Caiaphas in John chapter 11. Do you remember that? Caiaphas says about Jesus, he says, it's better for one man to die for the sake of the nation, so that people can all be saved, can come to God, than to the whole nation to be sacrificed. And he spoke this about Jesus, and he said it as the high priest, as he was prophesying as the high priest. You know that was true. But it wasn't true in the way that he was saying it. It wasn't so that they would get in better favor and better standing with the Romans and be saved. It was that the world would be saved through the sacrifice of Christ. And so Caiaphas didn't know it, but he was speaking the truth. Here, Pilate doesn't know it, but he's speaking the truth. This is the King of kings and the Lord of lords, who humbled himself, became a little baby, and suffered and went all the way to the cross to die on the tree for you and me. Now, Acts chapter 2, verse 22, if you have any doubt that this was a plan, that this was God's will, Acts chapter 2, verse 22 and following, Peter is preaching as the church starts, and he says this to the crowd, many of whom were there, and they beheld the man. Many of them were there, and they beheld the king. And he says to them, "Men of Israel, hear these words. Jesus of Nazareth, a man attested to you by God with mighty works and wonders and signs that God did through him in your midst, as you yourselves know. This Jesus, delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men." Now grasp what Peter is saying here. He's saying Jesus' flogging, his condemnation, the crucifixion, all of this happened because it was God's definite plan. But he said, you did it. You freely did it. They weren't off the hook because it was God's will. See, that's the sovereignty of God. It's hard for us to understand. God is so big and he's so great that he makes his will happen even through the lives of free will individuals who live on this earth. And they're guilty. They're guilty of the death of Christ. Now, what are the ramifications of this? I mean, now we're Every Sunday we hear some version of the gospel. We are understanding it, and we're understanding who Christ is. And we see, behold your king, and we know he's the king, and he's the king that's going to be returning soon. And that's the message of the scriptures too, is that there's one kingdom that will last. That it's the kingdom that's coming again. And Jesus is coming again with the kingdom fully. Who's going to be a part of that? Who's going to get to see that day when God rules and reigns in a perfect world? I mean, that's the dream, where every crooked path is made straight, where every sin is accounted for, when nobody gets away with things that they've hurt you by saying or doing, that there's justice coming, that you get to see salvation. Well, Jesus told this parable about people like you, people who hear the good news. Here's what Jesus said in Matthew chapter 13. Here's the parable. He said this: there was a sower. He went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Now, the cool thing about this parable is that Jesus gives us the interpretation of it just a little bit later on in the chapter. He tells us exactly what he's trying to say with the story. Here's what he says. He says, "Hear the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path." So this is people that hear it, and it just goes in one ear and out the other. It doesn't even register as it's true or not true. This is most people. Most people hear the reality of the spiritual world, and they say, that sounds a little like a fable. Right? I mean, there's great atheists out there, Richard Dawkins and all these other people. They're really logical, and I get that. And the spiritual stuff is too wacky, and I know you're talking about Jesus, but I don't even know if that's really real. And they don't believe it at all. The second group, Jesus says, "As for what was sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet it has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away." This is the person who believes it, receives it. Maybe they even come and get involved in a church at some point, and they believe it. It's a good news message, but then they realize that their life didn't get as good as they thought it was going to do. God hasn't come through with the things that he was supposed to come through for me. And I've been hurt by more people that call themselves Christians than before when I wasn't a Christian, so I don't even know what I'm doing here in the first place, and I'm out of here and forget about it and I'm gone. It's the person who comes under hardship and they quit. They quit. We all know some of those. The third person who hears this, "As for the one who's sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful." Oh, this is so many Americans. I believe it. I receive it. But man, I'm so busy. I have so much stuff going on. Kids are all playing sports. And my job is taking me all over the place. And then you get some little more riches, you get a little more money in your pocket, and now you don't have that many needs anymore. God doesn't really need to come through for you anymore. You're going to come through for yourself. And so you say you're a Christian. That's the title that you keep. But in reality, your heart's far from God. Your seed is getting choked out by the thorns. But then the last group, and this is what I prayed that is you and me. "As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. This is the one who hears this message about Christ and his flogging and his condemnation for us and on our behalf and for our sin to make full payment for it. You receive it with joy. That was for me. And so I'm going to be associated by faith in the Son of God. Not perfectly, not with understanding everything, but with what I've been given, with what God has shown me, I'm going to take that step of faith and believe. And that's the person then that goes from this place and they start to live it out. They start to discover what it means to live as a Christian. And it's hard in this world. It's very hard in our day and age. But you're going to go out from these doors and you're going to believe, and then you're going to take the next step of faith. And you're going to seek to be the Christian that God created you to be. You're going to put into practice and bear fruit in your life. Some of you are going to bear a lot of fruit. Some of you are going to bear a little bit of fruit. The most important thing is not how much or how little. It's just that you bear some fruit. And that's what I pray that we are. That we hear this message of Jesus of Nazareth 2,000 years ago, dying in our place and soon to rise again, we'll see. And that by believing in it, by faith, we then live for him. This is wisdom, biblical wisdom. All throughout the Bible, biblical wisdom is not just being able to know the information. Lots of people know the information. True wisdom is that you live out the knowledge that you've received. My prayer is that you would do that today for Christ.